Hello and welcome back for Algebra 2, Lesson 10.6. This is the last section we're doing in Chapter 10. This section is for the Law of Cosines. It goes nicely with the Law of Sines that we just did in last chapter. So you'll need to know when you can use which one. So the way I remember, instead of trying to remember if it's side angle side or angle side angle or which ones, I just remember that to use the Law of Sines, you have to have an angle and the side opposite of it, or be able to find that missing angle and then have the side opposite of it. And then you just have to be careful if it's side-to-side angle. Now for law of cosines, the good news is there is no ambiguous case or place where you have to be careful. And it helps us by being able to solve for the missing ones that we couldn't do so far. So if we had side angle side, for example, if I had side A angle C and side B, I could not use law of sines because I don't have an angle and its opposite side. And there's no way to get these two angles if I only have one angle. So I can't use the law of sines on this problem. Also, if I just had all three sides and no angle at all, I also cannot use the law of sines because I wouldn't have 3 out of the 4 pieces of my proportion. So the law of cosines helps us out in these last 2 cases, for side angle side and for side side side. So anytime you can't use law of sines, you go for law of cosines. Now, the bad news is there's a formula to remember. The good news is this first part right here, a squared equals b squared plus c squared, is just like the Pythagorean theorem. And you just have to remember whichever, you can even do c squared equals a squared plus b squared if you look at angle C. You just have to kind of remember this other part, which is bc cosine A. So whatever this number and this number is, you're going to multiply. And then the angle that is over here has to go with the side that is on the other side of the equation. So if I, for example, if I know angle A and angles and side C and side B, then these 3 things are numbers, and I just plug them all in, and that will give me a squared over here. So I would just square root it to find the final answer. If I don't know the angle, then we're going to have to solve for that. So let's go ahead and get started with some examples on those. So here we have angle C and A and B. So these A and B would be not opposite of that. They are touching it. So we have side angle side, basically, situation, and we're going to use the rule. So the rule says that whatever angle you have here, I'm going to put that little side here. C squared equals, you can look back into your formulas, but really you need to get to know them a little bit so that you can memorize them a little bit. But if the C is here, then you square the other 2, and then it's minus 2 times A times B times cosine C. So let's go ahead and write that out with these numbers. C squared equals 8 squared plus 5 squared minus 2 times 8 times 5 times cosine, because this is the law of cosines, of 32.2 degrees. An angle always goes with the word sine, cosine, or tangent. Okay, one thing to keep in mind here is that all of this is multiplication. So if you're going to type it in your calculator, I would type the whole thing all at once. Don't try to do 8 squared plus 5 squared minus 2 times 8 times 5. That would mess you up. All this stuff is one number. So we type it all in at once, and I'm doing this along with you. So 8 squared plus 5 squared minus 2 times 8 times 5 times cosine of 32.2 is 21.3. That cannot be the answer because this is only 8 and 5. There's no way the third side can be 21.3 because guess what? This is c squared. So I would keep that number in your calculator. Just like before, we can hit second square root, which is the second x squared button, and then we can hit second negative sign, which is answer. So I end up with the square root of the answer. And that will be a little bit more accurate than typing the square root of 21.3. You don't have to do that, but with higher level math, you want to start to get a little bit more accurate. Keep some accuracy in your decimals. My answer is 4.6. I don't see any units up here, so we're going to just stop with that. That is side C. It says solve it, though, so I'm not done. I only found side C. What else do I need to find to solve this triangle? I need the other two angles. They are missing. But you should only ever have to use law of cosines once, because now I have all three sides and an angle. I can use the law of sines. Sine of 32.2 over 4.6 equals, that was sine of angle C over little c. And then I can solve either of these. If you start with the bigger one, I think you have better luck. It doesn't really matter. We could run into the ambiguous case of law of sines here. So that's where you would want to be careful that only one of them would be right. So we have to, anyway, let's go ahead and solve it. Sine of 32.2, close parentheses, times 8 divided by 4.6. And that is the sine of A, because that was my side A. So I'm going to hit second sine of that answer and get 67.9 degrees. 67.9 degrees. To find B, I'm going to do 180 minus 67.9 minus 32.2, and we get 79.9 degrees. And that concludes this problem. I just want to make sure. Okay. All right, let's go on to the next problem. This one, they gave me side, side, side. So I've got three sides here. You get to choose whichever letter you want for whichever of these three little equations, because we have A, B, and C. We do not have capital anything. So you can pick whatever letter you want. I think I like to start with the biggest one over here, but it doesn't really matter. Let's just do A. Let's put side A over here on the left. So if I do 8, come on, pen. 8. Let it wake up. There we go. 8 squared equals 9 squared plus 7 squared minus 2 times 9 times 7 times cosine of, which one did I start with? I started with little a, so this is going to give me capital A. Okay, I like to put parentheses around this whole thing because it's going to cause us some problems. We're trying to solve now for A. Try to get the hang of that pattern of that formula too. All right, so if I was trying to solve this for A, it's all tangled up inside this stuff, and then we've got this 9 squared and the 7 squared in the way over here. So I'm going to start with subtracting 9 squared and subtracting 7 squared over here. So what is 8 squared minus 9 squared minus 7 squared? A lot of times you're going to end up with a negative number over here. That's okay. The other thing I like to do is multiply these together. Now I have a negative 2 times 9 times 7. 2 times 9 times 7 is negative 126 cosine of A. This is multiplication now, not subtraction. Keep that in mind. So how do you undo multiplication? You divide. So we're going to divide by negative 126. So negative 66 divided by negative 126. I have in my calculator 0.5238, blah, 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 blah. In order to solve for cosine then, I'm going to hit second cosine of second answer, or second negative. Okay, I want my calculator to do the inverse cosine of the answer. So second cosine, second answer is 58.4. So angle A is 58.4 degrees. And then you can use the law of sines to find another angle, like angle B. So we can do sine of 58.4 over 8 equals sine of B over 9. Cross multiply, divide, and you'll find angle B. And then once you have two angles, you can subtract them from 180 to find angle C. I'm going to go ahead and move on to another example. This one is side-side angle. Good news, side-side angle, those are the ones where you just plug it in. So here I have angle A. That means I'm going to start with A squared equals this one squared plus this one squared minus 2 times those other two numbers. This is the law of cosines, so this is cosine of 173. All I need to do now is type that big long thing in without stopping. Don't hit enter, just keep going. Type it in. Okay, and then don't forget to take the square root. If you don't take the square root, you're going to get way too big of an answer, like 1674.8. Square root that, you get 40.9. Much more reasonable when my side lengths are 23 and 18. So keep in mind that they need to be reasonable. Angle A is obtuse, very, very obtuse, 173 degrees. So this side will be a lot bigger than those. To find angle B and angle C, use the law of sines to find one of them. We have an obtuse triangle, so there's no way we can get that ambiguous case anyway. So sine 173 over 40.9 equals sine of B over 23. Let's try that one out real quick. 23 times the sine of 173, close parenthesis, divided by 40.9. That is the sine of B, so second sine of that answer is, angle, is 3.9 degrees. It's got to be tiny. This is 173 and we only can go to 180. So it's very, very small. If angle B is 3.9, then I'm going to do 180 minus 173 minus 3.9, and I get 3.1. Should be slightly smaller because side C is slightly smaller than side B. And there we have our solved triangle, both missing angles and one missing side. Here we got one more example. This one has all three sides again. Like I said before, you can start with whatever side you want. I'm going to start with the biggest one this time. So I'm going to put the 50.3 over here. Squared equals a squared plus b squared minus 2 times a times b times cosine of the one that I put on the other side, which is capital C. All right, here's my problem I need to solve. What I'm going to type in my calculator is 50.3 squared minus 35 squared minus 42 squared. That gets rid of these and subtracts them over there. And that leaves me with negative 458.91 equals, I like to do 2 times 35 times 42, negative 2940 cosine of C, and then we divide by negative 2940. It's very important that you do division here. A lot of people see that minus because it was subtraction before, but then when I removed these, now it's like a negative sign. So negative 458.91 divided by negative 2940. And that little decimal number that you have in your calculator is the cosine of C. So second cosine, second answer. 81.0 is what I got for angle C. All right, and I'm not going to finish solving this one, but you can use the law of sines to find another angle and then subtract from 180 for your last angle. All right, there's one more part to this lesson. Let me finish. Just remember when you get your answers to kind of double check them and make sure they're reasonable. Whatever the largest angle is should have the largest side. The smallest angle should have the smallest side. Okay, last part of this lesson is finding area using another formula. Oh, this is a story problem. The good news on the story problems one is it's not solved. It's just find the missing piece. So the question for this one, how long will it take him to travel from the cave to the waterfall? You would find this distance and then multiply it by 2.5 miles per hour. And that will give you how much time. So you would use the law of cosines with these three numbers to figure out what this side is, and then just turn it into time using that rate. Excuse me. So I'm not going to go through these story problems, but that's all you need to do. This one is the same thing. I believe they're trying to figure out how far it would be to go around something versus straight. And so at the end, they want you just to subtract those to see which one's further. All right, last part, area formula. This is a new area formula. If you want to know where it comes from, if you want to know where law of cosines come from, you can just Google how to derive the Heron's formula or how to derive law of cosines, and you can watch how they came up with these crazy formulas. But here is the law of Heron's formula, which helps find us area again. This one is the area if they only give you 3 sides. So what if I only had 3 sides and I had no angle at all? I don't have the height. I don't have anything to do with the angles. So what you do on these is first you have to find something called the semi-perimeter, which is the perimeter divided by 2. It doesn't say equals S on your paper, so you might want to write that down. This is how you find S. First, you need to find that number, and then you plug it into this formula. You put the S by itself, S minus A, S minus B, S minus C, and then you multiply them all together and take the square root, and you're done. So it's pretty simple if you have that formula. All right, let's try it. So first of all, we need to find S, which is 1/2 of all of the sides added up, because semi-perimeter, so we're just adding up all the sides. So 2 plus 6 plus 7, divided by 2 is 7.5. So my semi-perimeter is 7.5. Now to find the area, the formula is you take the S, and then you take the S minus the first number, and the S minus the second number, and the S minus the third number. You just type all that in. I personally don't put the square root in. I just do 7.5 times, and then I might do those in my head, 5.5 times 1.5 times 0.5. Get that number in my calculator, and then I square root the answer. So second square root of that number that I got, which by the way was 30.9375. So when I square root it, I get 5.6. So 5.6. It says, what is the area to the nearest square yard? These are in yards. So this is square yards. 5.6 square yards. And that is Heron's formula. I believe I've got one more example, so we can use that. This one has much larger numbers, so we're going to have a lot bigger area. So let's again start with finding S. It's 1/2 of 50 plus 28 plus 30, which is 54. So then my formula is going to be 54 times, I'm just going to do it in my head. What's 54 minus 50? What's 54 minus 28? 26. What's 54 minus 30? It doesn't matter what order you do them in, just you need to take your S minus each of those. Now multiply that together, 54 times 4 times 26 times 14, and you get 78624. Don't forget to square root it. Heron's formula has a square root, second square root of that answer, and you get 280.4 meters squared. So there's my area of the swimming pool. Now that concludes our lesson of the law of cosines 10.6. We'll have another worksheet afterwards to kind of practice law of cosines and law of sines together. Let me know if you have questions.